Hello, Karibu, welcome to my channel. My name is Chilanda and this is Library Without Borders. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about all the books that I read for the month of December. Now, it ain't that many, but I still read books. Especially that December, I know is a busy month for everyone. We always have these high TBRs for December, knowing that we're not even going to read half of them because we're out there doing other stuff that have to do with holidays. So anyways, yeah. So before I even talk to you about the books, y'all, I realized that I wished everyone, Merry Christmas to those who, celebrate Christmas and all, but I didn't wish y'all like Happy Kwanzaa. That is a very new holiday to my family and I think most Africans, even though once I read what Kwanzaa meant and where it derived and who created it, it was obviously by African Americans, but the holiday itself, it stems from Africa, so when I read that, I was like, that's something that I can get down with, you know what I mean? It's just that it's celebrating during a couple of days, whereas Christmas is just that one day. It's simple and it's been, it's kind of like, it doesn't take that much thinking anymore, whereas Kwanzaa, it takes a little bit of thinking, a little bit of teaching our kids what it is, and even us learning about Kwanzaa. So my thing would be to, like, next year to actually read books about Kwanzaa, if there are any. I know there are. We have actually had 1 or 2 books about Kwanzaa that we used to read to our children, and we used to try to pronounce the words because they're in Swahili. I mean, Swahili is my language, you know what I mean? So the words are not complicated for me, but it was, it was cute to teach the kids and what they meant, and to see the depiction of Kwanzaa in those children's books. So like I said, I just need to incorporate it more in my life. Okay, all right. And also, okay, I thought it'd be great to wrap up all the books that I read for the month of December in my cowboy outfit, because y'all know year 2024 I was in my cowgirl era, so I thought it'd be nice to just not end the year because we're already 2025 as I'm filming this, but let's just say to end the wrap up of 2024 in this attire. Okay, so yes, brown for this brown girl. Okay, I'm done. So the first book that I'll be talking to you about will be Daughter of a Queen by Sarah Bird. Now I have a vlog on this video, so I'm not gonna get into too much about the book. Yay! That means this wrap up is gonna be short. Yes, we're starting 25 strong. So obviously, like I said, it's the story of this girl, this woman, the only black woman who's ever enlisted in the U.S. Army was it the 1700s, during the Civil War? During the Civil War, yeah. Like I said, I already talked about it, but it was about Kathy Williams, and it's her journey from enslavement to being a soldier among men. Like, y'all, the only woman. Like I said, I have the vlog, I'll post it here, y'all, but I share all my thoughts about how it's so unfathomable that a woman during that time, especially a black one, could enlist in the army and no one found out for like 2 years. Like, ain't that mind-boggling? Whoa. I read that story, I was like intrigued. I love the aspect that the author took in terms of creating her history. She gave her a grandmother that was coming from West Africa. I like that part. I like the fact that she also mentioned her journey. This is like the author, because I watched her video and I was curious about the author and how she just came about writing a book that was obviously a book that needed to be written by a black author. So I enjoyed listening to Sarah Bird talk about the journey in writing Kathy's story. And as I said, I had talked about this. If you want to hear my review, please go check my vlog if you haven't already, So, and this was a 4 out of 5, definitely for me. The next book was actually the book club pick. We picked Xiran J. Zhao, Iron Widow. And I think it's a YA book. And it was interesting. It gave me, what's that movie? Hunger Games. It gave Hunger Games vibes through and through. Essentially, it's about this main character was in China. And then, the way this book started, it started talking about foot binding. You guys know about foot binding happening in China? Oh my lord. I was already cringing. I was like, oh. So, yeah, you have that aspect, so watch out for that. So it's this young girl. She basically decides to go avenge her sister because the Chinese daughters are being sent to be killed off because they live in a patriarchal society where obviously men are more valued than girls. And it's almost sci-fi because you have these characters like her. She goes into these machines type of stuff in order to fight, right? So how do they call it? Chi? Let me grab my notes. All right, so my notes say we have spirit pressure. That was one element that was found in the book. You have these chrysalids. So I believe these chrysalids are these machines that they get into, and there they use their spirit pressure to work the machines and fight, if not mistaken. And the key, so key and spirit metal was subdivided into 5 elements. You had wood, fire, water, earth, and metal. So basically, I think she was one of those 5 elements. Can't recall, y'all. And then we have a group of Hunduns fighting against human. Uria, this is my writing. Okay, so I think it's Urexia. I said it's the world in which the Iron Widow lives, and they're fighting within the Yin Yang realm. Yin Yang, essentially, when they're in those machines or robots, whatever you want to call them, you have the Yin Yang, and it's basically female and male. And when the male is in, I don't want to say Yang, it's one of those either Yin or Yang in there. The female is on the other side, and he's basically the domineering one. And usually what happens is that the female is sacrificed, like she will die and the male survives. But thing also, they don't survive sometimes beyond 18. So apart from all that confusing elements that I've mentioned, you also have a love triangle sort of between the main character, who's the Iron Widow, and 2 men. One of them she meets basically when she goes to avenge her sister because her sister was killed. She's in that world where they, I guess, enlist people to fight the Hunduns or this other enemy. She meets him there, and at first they are enemies. They don't like each other. He's called like something death, and he's killed so many people. So obviously she's scared for her life, but something does develop between them. But at the same time, she also left another guy at home with whom she had developed something. But you have to understand they are from different ethnicities, so they can't really also be together because she's almost like a peasant, he's like of higher class, But he also comes into that world where she is with that other guy, and he comes there to help her and him. But then something will develop between them 3, as I said. I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but like I said, it was a good story. It was fast-paced. There were all those battles that you look for in a fantasy world. There was a bit of historical aspect to it, which was my jam. And it's YA, it's young. It was cool. I have a few stuff that I would like to read to you guys. A few stuff that I've highlighted. Female, that label has never done anything for me except dictate what I can or cannot do. No going anywhere without permission. No showing too much skin. No speaking too loudly or unkindly or at all if the men are talking. No living my life without being constantly aware of how pleasing I am to the eye. No future except pushing out son after son for a husband or dying in a chrysalis to give some boy the power to reach for glory. Does that sound like it reverberates with us women? Yeah. Okay. Maybe 2 more because I did highlight a couple of stuff. So it's about her foot binding. Then 2 of my aunts held me down against the floor as my grandmother broke every bone along the arches on my feet to crush them in half. The other toes wrap around the bottoms of my feet, clutching the other side near the heels, as if trying to squeeze the mess of bones and flesh back up my legs. My soles are smaller than my palms, a pair of perfect lotus feet. Jesus Christ. And to think that it was your own grandmother that did that to you. All right, let's see, maybe two more. Oh, here it was when I was talking about the 5 elements. Like everything else in the world, ki and spirit metal, which is just ki in pure crystallized form, are governed by the 5 subdivisions of yin and yang: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. From most yang to most yin in that order. Oh yeah, I like that one. So this one was, again, with bound feet, you learn the value of the bonds between family. No one can do everything alone. We all must rely on one another. Like, that was her mother trying to make sense, of the food binding by saying, well, yeah, because why you find out with the Iron Widow is that sometimes she can't really walk faster, she has to rely on someone to help her, you know what I mean? Anyways, y'all, outside of that, like I said, it's a good read, so it's gonna be 3.75 out of 5. All right, so next I read The Attic Child by Lola Jai. Yo, this book, it's a Nigerian author who actually wrote about what was happening in Congo. So the way it begins, it's 1900s and 1974, so I was right. So in 1900, we have this Congolese kid who was taken from Congo during the 1900s and is taken by an explorer into England, okay? But what happens with that child is that the explorer does actually take care of him. He's actually kind and nice. He does pay for his school. He does bring him into places. Like, he actually takes care of that child like his own. That's good. And before I even get into it, I just want to let you know that this story is actually based on a story, like a real story of a Congolese child that was taken by Henry Stanley or Stanley Maud something. My husband will put his name there. He was this English explorer in Africa, and he did go into Congo. And I think I actually have a book by him, one of those classic books by that Stanley guy. Apart from his story, we also have the story of a young lady, Laura. Laura is living in 1974. Now, her story is also traumatizing. What happens with her is that she lived in the house that Celestine, that's the name of the boy, the Congolese boy, lived in the 1900s. So her story is that her father married a woman who will become her stepmom. But from the get-go, the relationship between Laura and the stepmom is already fraught. You know what I mean? It's already fraught with some weird shit, okay? The stepmom does not like her. And it works in her favor because at some point, we do not hear from the dad. Something happens to the dad. So it's only her and Laura in that house that belonged to her dad, where Celestine lived in the 1900s. And the attic comes into play because the mom starts to abuse the child. Like, her abuse began like at 11, like she'd be beaten, and then she decided to put the girl in the attic for days, sometimes for weeks, and barely feeding her, and she would go to the toilet in there. Like, she went through so much heartache. And then going back to Celestine had a different name. He had a Congolese name, Dikembe. Yes, Dikembe was his Congolese name. Y'all know Dikembe, like Mutombo Dikembe, the basketball player. So that was his Congolese name. But once he was shipped to England, the explorer who took care of him decided that his name was now gonna be Celestine. And you hear a little bit about Dikembe's life in Congo. He was with his, I guess, 3 brothers, so there were 4 of them. They live with their mom and dad. Their dad gets murdered really badly because he goes to work like for the white man, digging some stuff. It's probably, and I think it's after Leopold's second period. And throughout the book, y'all, you hear of how melancholic Celestine is. he misses his family, but then it's to the point of like almost forgetting, because he's gonna live there for the rest of his days, years. And the way the two, Laura and Dikembe, will meet, it'll be by sheer chance, but also by working tirelessly with this other man. So I'm talking about Laura working with another researcher, and this researcher is actually of mixed race. And it's important, the reason why I mentioned it's very important, because while they're working to find more information about what happened to Dikembe, he's also dealing with his own demons, the whole race thing. It's 1974 in England, he's half black, half white. He's dealing with that, and while they're researching what happened to Dikembe, they will start to discover about white people, Africa, and England, and its legacy, in the African continent. Basically, the English Empire, its legacy on the African continent. At the same time, what even pushed Laura to ever go on a journey searching for Dikembe was that when she went into the attic, her stepmom, something happens to her stepmom, and the house is bequeathed to her. So obviously, she goes into the attic where she lived traumatic experience. So she goes into the attic, very traumatized, right, to revisit the famous attic where she was kept for days, for weeks, starved almost to death. And I'm not going to tell you how she made it out. That's for you to discover. Hopefully you'll pick up the book. And she discovers this necklace. And it's a necklace that's made maybe of an animal teeth, but very African, very Congolese. And there was also, I think, a note or maybe some writings on the wall in the attic. And it was names, including Dikembe. So that is the thing that will lead her to go on this journey and discover who was Dikembe, who shared maybe the same experience of having been locked in an attic, right? And that's how she would meet that researcher, and they would go, like I said, on the journey to discover Dikembe. And boy, oh boy, did she take me on a journey. Like, it was alternating between Dikembe in 1900 and then Laura in 1974. And you see the evolution of Dikembe. And at some point, while Laura and the researcher are looking into Dikembe's life and see if he's alive, if he had children, a wife, or if he has descendants, because y'all have to know 1900, like in 1974, like the likelihood of maybe meeting him might not be so, so a lot happened in this book. And it was bittersweet to have this Nigerian author write about my people. It was really bittersweet. So I want to share a few of the quotes. Y'all know I like to share quotes with y'all. So let's see. Your father, it is your father, the Belgians, the force publique. What did I? Yeah, because he was meant talking about Belgians, I guess. I want to read you guys a little bit of the author's note after the quotes. And first off, I want to say something about the name Celestine. It's such a girl's name. I didn't understand why they named Dikembe a girl's name, but go figure what was going on in that white man's mind when he named him Celestine. I don't know. Oh, there's a scene here. So remember how I said he's actually going to school, and you have to remember at that time he goes into a private school that's paid for by that explorer, but there's a bunch of white kids who probably never seen a black kid. So they're like, one of them prodded my arm with his finger. Blame me, it's real. They all began to laugh except Bill. Of course he is, that's what I told you, said Bill. I can't do the accent. Speak then, said one. I opened my mouth to do so, then thought, why should I? I said speak. And then one of the guys says, leave him alone, said Bill. And then this guy's like, one of those stupid kids. What is it, though? Said another boy. Ain't he like one of those apes in that book we saw? This is what it shows. Let me just see what other thing I can share. This is again another one of those. He's in school again, and then the teacher asks him a question, and he's like, in Africa, India, Australia, it's all there, isn't it? Speak up, Celestine, says the teacher. We go to these countries and do our best to make their lives better. We civilize the occupants so they can become good, don't we? And then he continued, this is the same teacher. I myself have witnessed how fruitless this is with the Aborigines of Australia. Fruitless. It's as though they're stuck in their poor, brickless, and savage ways, a mentality which can only lead to no good. Wouldn't you agree, Celestine? Y'all know what they did to the original people of Australia, right? And then the teacher kept taunting Celestine. He's like, Celestine? And Celestine's like, yes, sir. Isn't that why you are here? And then Celestine's like, sir. And he's like, to become civilized. Oh, y'all. Certain parts were just like, man. Oh, now this is the researcher, the half black, half white. He says something here. He's like, I wish you could understand, even though what happened to the people in my family, talking about the black people, the enslavement legacy, even though what happened to the people in my family did so some centuries ago, and without me present, it doesn't mean that today I don't feel the pain. It doesn't mean that such legacies have missed me. I think that's a message for everyone that likes to throw it to black people, as in, forget slavery, it's happened a long time ago, you weren't even there. This clearly says, I don't feel the pain. Okay, sorry. It doesn't mean that today I don't feel the pain. It doesn't mean that such legacies have missed me. Anyways, y'all, so there's a lot more that happens in this book, like a lot more. It was heartbreaking for me, especially when I read a little bit of the author's notes. I don't want to read the whole thing to you guys, but it was important. One last quote, okay? Here it says, "That you have, sir," said Monty. That story again lends itself to the possibility that you are from the Luba tribe based in the Katanga or Kasai regions. Remember when I said I'm descendant of the Luba tribe? When I read the history of the African art, told you about different, so as soon as he said Luba, I was like, yo, my people. She chose my ethnicity, my tribe. So, but I can't say the Congo is my area of expertise. What I do know is, unlike a lot of the country, most of Katanga is an elevated plateau with poor soil, and only a few places the rubber plant could have really flourished. As soon as she said rubber, I was thinking about Leopold II and the rubber, red rubber, and how people were their hands were being chopped off if they did not meet the quota of, picking up rubber. Anyways, I don't want to read the end because I will be spoiling for you guys. I just wanted to mention that. But the author's notes, she talks about how she was fascinated with the black people of Britain before 1948. But she talks about her journey of how she wrote this book, but she went into this museum in England and saw this picture of this little black boy. And from then on, her story germinated. Baby, that word exists? Germinated? Like, was born. Her story was born, okay? And then, the original name was Ndugu Mahali, of the little boy. The man that the explorer that she based her character on was Henry Morton Stanley. So I had something when I was talking about him. And then she says, along with the sorrow of imagining what this little boy had been through, you only have to look at the photographs to read his trauma. I felt the need to tell his story, but in a different way, and one which would not, Cameron, you can finish that. Then she says, I was drawn to set the book partly in the Congo for 3 reasons. Firstly, Lualaba River in the Congo was where Ndugu Mahali, I just don't want to say because I don't want to spoil the story for you. Secondly, I drew parallels from my earlier readings about Ota Benga, a young Congolese man exhibited in the Bronx Zoo in 1906. And finally, the fact that not enough people are aware of the atrocities that occurred in the Congo between 1885 and 1908, a period which saw the slaughter of an estimated 10 to 15 million African people, aka Congolese people. I'm not done. Reading vivid descriptions of the brutality suffered by the Congolese people under King Leopold II of Belgium and seeing the photographs that exist meant that research for this book at times left me feeling exhausted with sadness, especially during that unique period in 2020 when the world seemed to be talking about race and when statues of Victorian explorers and slave traders were being torn down around the world. I'ma leave it at that. Yo, When I say this book is dear to me, y'all know why. Okay? Alright, so it's a 4 out of 5. Lastly, the physical book that I read is Christmas Morning by Rachel Greenlaw. And comparatively to all the other books that I've heard other booktubers talk about that had a lot of smut, this one didn't have any, which I was happy because I want my Christmas book to be the way this one was, you know? So it's essentially about this character who is overworking. What's her name? Eva. Eva is this character who has a beautiful husband, but then she is working endlessly. And they have a tradition every Christmas. They meet up with their friends with whom they went to school at this faraway cabin. Yeah. And they celebrate Christmas together. But this year it's a bit different for Eva because something tragic happened around the time of Christmas. And ever since then, she's thrown herself into her work. Now, because of that, the relationship between Eva and her husband is strained. She does go with her husband to the get together far away at that cabin to meet her friends, but she's very removed from the event. She hasn't called her best friend for like almost 3 years. She keeps like ignoring her. So she goes there. Her husband actually goes there before her, and she arrives there with her assistant. Essentially what the story is about is her at midnight getting a visit from her grandmother. And her grandmother tells her that something is gonna happen because you young lady need to change your life. Like you need to do something before you lose everything. So it has that, remember the movie with Matthew McConaughey, when he's visited by 10 ghosts of his past girlfriends. So that's essentially a bit of that. So at midnight, there's a loop that happens where she is thrown into a different body and she is experiencing the life of that person during that Christmas period. And it gives her a little bit of perspective. You know what I mean? Because she lost that. She's been so consumed with her grief that she decided to throw herself in her work and at the same time almost sacrifice the relationship with her husband and hence even the friendship. So with that basically second chance of having to see the perspective of different people in her life, she gets to see the perspective of her assistant, the perspective of her best friend, the perspective of one of the employees who's cooking for them for that weekend, and another perspective, even her own perspective. Okay, so I thought the concept was really interesting. It wasn't confusing. It was done properly. The only thing I wanted to say was that thank God she wasn't thrown in the bodies of the man, because imagine, because at some point she's waking up in one of the other female characters and she's like, oh, she's checking like her best friend is preggo and she's like, is that how he feels? Anyways, I don't want to give in too much because it was a good story. Contrarily to the Christmas book I read last year, I think it was by Nancy Thayer, I wasn't too impressed by this. But this one, it was a good one. I would recommend. So it's 3 out of 5 for a Christmas book. There, like I said, there was no smut at the end, like last maybe chapter. There's little cuteness happening there, but besides that, it was a good Christmas book. Okay. Finally, the books that I listened to. So I listened to The Optician's Wife by Betsy Reevely. So I'm gonna be looking at my screen a little bit just because I read this like way at the beginning of December, just to, so I want to remember. So this story was so gruesome. I don't know what I put myself into, but it's a thriller. It's essentially the story of Deborah, and I think it's a story that's either in UK or Australia. One of those places. It was definitely not the United States or Canada. So Deborah is 17 years old and she is smitten with this guy, Larry. And against all odds, Larry, who's handsome, blonde, beautiful, falls in love with Deborah, who is by all characteristics plain. Okay, like not pretty, definitely not, according to description in the book. So They fall in love, they start their lives together. But then soon as they start their life together, there are some murders that starts to happen. And one of them murder, I'm just gonna describe it, is of a librarian who goes to her house and then she is attacked and she is like brutalized. What is bludgeoned? Yeah, bludgeoned with something. And once the person who's, committing those crimes is done, he removes the eye. Maybe hence the optician's wife. I have no idea, but that person removes the eyes. So the first murder happens, everybody in that little town are, shaken by that. They're like, what's going on? What's going on? But then a lot more happen. A lot more of the murders happen. And at the same time, Larry and Deborah are having children and they're living their lives, but then these murders are happening. And one day, something very bad happens to Deborah in her own house. But without spoiling the story for you guys, I want to just say this. Larry decides to tell his wife that she should sell her body because they needed to make extra cash. Who says that? Who does that? What kind of husband? And then what kind of wife actually agrees? Anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that. So you've opened that door. What do you think is gonna happen? One of those men is gonna now come without your husband being there and do what? Force himself, right? So that happens. But now let me talk to you about the twist, y'all. The twist! Oh my god, the twist! Did I see coming? I think I guessed it at some point in the story because yeah, it was a good thriller. Like it was a good thriller. Y'all know the way I read my thrillers on Audible is like they're free, so I'm like, why not? It was a 3 out of 5. I had a good time. I had a gruesome good time with the book. Okay, so The Optician's Wife, 3 out of 5. Next, I actually listened to 4. Wow. Unspeakable by Kevin O'Brien. So let me just remember the characters, guys. Okay, so I can't remember the guy's name was, but essentially it's about Olivia. She's a therapist and she has this ability to put you to sleep. I forgot those, and then while you're asleep, she's able to ask you questions. That's Olivia. One of these days, while she's working, she meets this young man. This young man is like barely 16. He comes to see her and he's like, I need you to hypnotize me, okay? I need you to hypnotize me because I think something is happening and I can't understand why it's happening. And Olivia at first refuses because she knows that sometimes things can go wrong and something did go wrong in the past, so she's very reluctant to use hypnosis. But then he's so insistent and he's so young, she's like, okay, why not? So the first time she hypnotizes him and she discovers that something bizarre is happening with this dude, like this young kid. He has I guess, how do you call it? A different personality? Is that different personality or what is it? Multi-personality? A different guy starts to speak through this young boy and he says some perverted things and she's like panicking and she's like, okay, snap out of it, she tells him to snap out of it. But once that is done, she's like, okay, I don't want to see you because you need to go see like a real professional. Like I'm a therapist, like I don't really do this hypnosis thing, okay? And he's like, no one else can help me. That's the boy. He's like, no one else can help me, I need your help. And while this is going on, like while he's trying to convince Olivia to keep seeing him, there are multiple gruesome murders that happen. Something happens to 2 of his friends and the police are also looking at this young boy because they're like, first something happened to like his parents and he was the only one that made out alive, so the police are like, okay. And then people that are closer to him, they also drop dead, so they're like, okay, you are the common denominator, what's going on? Apart from that, you also have this kid who's living with his grandfather and his grandmother. Boy, y'all, like I said, I don't want to give you too much, but the twist. I was like, what? Anyways, it was a good thriller. It was really gruesome. Like I said, really, I don't know why I went on this thing of reading gruesome books, but it's a 3.75 out of 5. It was good. It was like 12 hours of listen, but it was a good book. Kevin O'Brien, Unspeakable. Like I said, I would talk to you more, but when it comes to thriller, if I give you too much, I may spoil it for you guys. So once that was done, I read Last Liar Standing by Danielle M. Wong. And this book, funny thing is, I had it for free until December 31st, you guys. And I had at some point I only had 2 hours to finish this book, and I was like, oh my god, it's gonna expire. And I was like, I didn't want to use my free credit to buy a book that I was almost finished, that I had only 2 hours left. So yo man, I was against time, trying to listen to the story before December 31st. So I finished the story, and it's about this woman. She loses her memory by getting into an accident, not on purpose. She is hit by a car, and then she's in the hospital, and she has lost 10 years of her memory. So it's essentially discovering what happened during those 10 years. There's a relationship with her husband. She needs to discover what happened between her and her husband, because something does happen to the husband. Is she to blame? What happened? At the same time, there was a friendship with her friend Abby. I remember her name, her best friend Abby's name, but I don't remember the main character. And also, when she's in the hospital, the nurses are like, is there anyone you can call that can, she's like, yeah, my best friend, Abby. But then Abby's like, I never want to talk to her. And it had been almost 10 years of them not talking. Was it 10 years? Or less than that? But anyways, their friendship had already been strained. You also will discover that why eventually. And there's also the relationship between her and, what is it? This guy. He's not a butler, but he's essentially the man who drives her, because she's very rich. She's very rich. She's also not a surgeon. She's one of those high-paid doctors. So once she's out of the hospital, she goes back into her home that's in a different town. Now go figure why she had an accident in a different town, because the way the book starts, you're already like, what's going on here? So when she goes back, it's this man, let's say her butler slash lawyer slash taxi driver. You also discover what's going on between him and her. And lastly, like I said, I don't want to spoil it for you guys. There is a twist, obviously. Something happens, and she starts to remember basically what happened, or what was missing those 10 years, what happened in the last 10 years of her life. And what she discovers is pretty damning, okay? But also I want to mention that we do go back when she was young and in university, when she first meets her husband, and the husband had been married before. So anyways, that's it. Like I said, it was a 3 out of 5. It was okay. I'm not sure that I like the narration of this book, because the narrator, her voice was a bit I had a little irk with it. I don't know how to explain it, but other than that, it was a good read, a good listen. Okay, so 3 out of 5. And lastly, I read A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. I listened to it before Last Liar Standing. Now, at the beginning when I started the book, I wasn't really invested in it, but once the book picked up, I enjoyed the book. So I briefly spoke about it in my previous video, in my when I was talking to you about the 10 books that I enjoyed for the year 2024. And it's already 50 minutes, so I'm just gonna keep this short. But it's a romance with magical realism, and I know a lot of people had a bit of not so positive things to say about the book, but there were also some great positive things. I'm in between. It's about Ezra and Ricky. Obviously, Ricky comes from a family. First of all, I want to say something about her sisters. They were really not to my liking, and I looked at the relationship I have with my siblings. It's not like that. Like, why would you put down your little sister because she's different than y'all? even the way they spoke to her was just so ugh. Anyways, she decides that she doesn't want to be like the rest of her family members. She's gonna go in a different town and then open a flower shop. Okay, that good? Fine. And then while she's getting her flower shop there, she does meet a girl, and they're gonna be like good friends for the remaining of the story. And at the same time, you also meet Ezra. There's also a dual perspective there. You have the perspective of Ezra and the perspective of Ricky. So the thing about Ezra is that this man is not a vampire, but he is what they call something. Million. Ooh. Y'all put the name in the comment, or I'll try to find out what the name is. But he basically was cursed to live forever. So what happened is that he lived during the Harlem Renaissance, okay? And he's into music. He's like, you know, he plays music. I think he produces music. And at some point, he has this love interest, but then, you know, he's not really invested. So she's like, you know what? I'm gonna put a hex on you, which means that, you know, when you do fall in love, that relationship will not evolve because something's gonna happen to that person. And the person who cursed him does something very, very bad. And that's it. And then Ezra is stuck in this continuous forever life, and he does his best not to meet Ricky because he knows what the consequences will be if they ever live their love. Okay, so there you have it. That was essentially the story. Like I said, there's a lot more. There were some commentaries, obviously, about black people and black love and what happened during the Harlem Renaissance and the killing of children in the church, and a lot of things were mentioned as well. But it was good. It was a 4 out of 5. Like I said, I listened to it, so I did enjoy Ricky's voice and Ezra's voice being narrated by people who narrated the story. So okay, you guys, I'm so sorry, but I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow. In December. Can you believe it? But by all means, it does not mean that I reached my goal for December. I read maybe 2 of 3 of those books were part of my December TBR. And here, y'all, all of this was also part of December. So what I'll do, I'm not gonna have a January TBR. I'm just gonna have a wrap up where I'm gonna be reading the rest of the books that I was supposed to read in December in January, and just, you know, review them at the end of the month of January. So there you have it, you guys. Again, thank you so much for continuing to watch my content. I really appreciate y'all. I really appreciate y'all. So if you want, please, you know, leave me a comment below. If that's not something you want to do, but you want to let me know that you were there from the beginning of the video till the end, please leave me, I'm tempted to say cowboy hat. Why not? Okay? Leave me a cowboy hat. Alright? And I will see you in my next video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Alright? Ciao.
This is library without borders. Please don't forget to like, comment.